thanks for visiting my channel. Today's video is by request. We're going to be making gingerbread men. I had several of you contact me and ask if I would be willing to do a tutorial on gingerbread men, and I said absolutely. What's Christmas without gingerbread men anyway? So we are going to make gingerbread men today. A couple of things to note: gingerbread men, making the dough requires a little bit of time, so you're going to want to prep ahead. The dough needs to chill a minimum of 2 to 3 hours. You can even chill it overnight or up to 3 days. So you want to kind of plan ahead for that, and then once it's nicely chilled, you're going to roll them out, cut them out, bake them, let them cool, and then we'll decorate them. And decorating them is the best part, right? So let's get started. Okay, we are going to start by mixing together our wet ingredients. And we are going to start with 3/4 of a cup of lightly packed brown sugar. And then we need a stick and a half of room temperature butter. Put those on our stand mixer, and we're going to cream those together. Start on low and then go ahead and take it up a little bit higher, and we're going to let them cream together for about 2 minutes. Okay, once your butter and your sugar are creamed together nicely, we're going to scrape down the bowl. Scrape off our beater a little bit. And then we're going to add 1 egg. We're going to add 1/2 cup of unsulfured molasses. And we're going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And I'm using my homemade. If you haven't tried that yet, you're going to want to give that a try. It is so good. And then we're going to turn our mixer back on and mix it for about a minute or so until everything's nice and incorporated. Okay, now for our dry ingredients. In my bowl, I have 3½ cups of all-purpose flour, and to that we are going to add a tablespoon of ginger, and we want a tablespoon of cinnamon, and then we want 1/2 teaspoon each of ground cloves and nutmeg. We need 1 teaspoon of baking soda. This is a 1/2 teaspoon measure, so I need 2 1/2 teaspoons or 1 teaspoon total, and then we need 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And then we're going to whisk that together. We're going to scrape down our bowl again. And we're going to turn our mixer on to low and gently add in the flour. And we only want to mix it until it's incorporated. We don't want to overmix it. Once you add your dry ingredients to your wet ingredients in a cookie, you don't want to overmix it or your cookies can become tough. Okay, once you get your dough thoroughly mixed together, then we are going to get it ready for chilling. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide it in half, and we're going to wrap each half in plastic wrap. And I just kind of gather it together so that I can make it kind of a disc shape. It just makes it easier for rolling out. And then just make sure they're well covered in plastic so that they don't dry out. So we have 2 discs, and I'm going to pop them in my refrigerator for at least 2, maybe 3 hours, and then we'll get busy rolling and cutting. Okay guys, my dough has been chilling for about 2.5 hours, so we're ready to start rolling. I've got my cute little gingerbread people, I guess you could say, cookie cutters. These are about 4-inch cookie cutters. I have the boy and the girl, and then I have, these are about 2-inch cookie cutters, and I have another boy and a girl. We're going to be using both sets of those. So what we want to do is we want to generously flour our surface, because we don't want anything to stick. It smells so good. Just another word on baking them. We're going to bake them at 350 degrees. I have my oven preheated on 350, and I always use parchment lined baking sheets, and I recommend that you do that as well. You don't have to, but I do think that it's better to use parchment lined baking sheets. And then I just, you saw me, I got flour on it, I turned it over and floured it again, and then moved some more flour around on my countertop. And then we want to make sure that our rolling pin is also well floured. And then we're going to start rolling. And because it is so cold, it's going to take a little bit of muscle at first. And we want to roll it out to about 1/4 inch. And then what I do is kind of turn it, make sure it's not sticking, and then roll it out some more. And then the other thing that I do to make sure it's not sticking is I also will try to flip it over. And just keep working it. As it warms up a little bit, it'll be easier to roll. And you want to get your disc rolled out to 1/4 inch. Okay, and then once you get it rolled out to about 1/4 inch, make sure your cookie cutter is well floured also. Again, we don't want anything to stick. And then we're just going to place the cookie cutter and press down. And then you're going to place it on a parchment lined baking sheet. See how easy it is to work with when your dough is cold? Let's do some boys. If you do need a little help getting them off of your countertop, mine release pretty well because I have granite, but you can always use a flat spatula to get them off of your countertop if you need to. And whatever size cookies You want to make sure that the cookies you're placing on the same cookie sheet are roughly the same size so that they bake evenly. If you do larger shapes and smaller shapes, the smaller shapes will bake faster and they won't have the same texture as the larger ones. And then when you get to the end, just put your scraps together in a ball. Gently, you don't want to overwork your dough. Gently bring your dough back together. Reflour your surface and roll it out again. And you want to place them about 1.5 to 2 inches apart on your baking sheet. So my baking sheet is nice and full. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these in the oven, and we're going to bake these for 8 to 10 minutes depending on size. You want them to start to be golden brown on the edges. If you find when you first take your dough out it's wanting to crack instead of roll out smooth, just let it warm up a little bit and then it'll be easier to roll out for you and the cracking will stop. You didn't do anything wrong, don't panic, just let it warm up a bit and then it will be easier for you to roll. Once you are done, once your cookies are done baking, and my 4-inch ones are taking about 10 minutes, my smaller guys are taking about 8 minutes, you want to let them cool on the cookie sheet for 5 minutes and then transfer them to a cooling rack. Okay guys, something I wanted to mention or bring to your attention. This is my first batch and they're fairly cool. Any flour that does not bake into the dough, any flour residue, you can just, most of it will bake into your cookie as it's baking, but if it doesn't, just take your finger, oops, almost dropped him. If it doesn't, just take your finger and it will, the residue will come off. It's not a big deal. So don't panic about that. Here's another one. See how there's a little bit of flour left on her head? That can just be brushed away. It's not a big deal. Okay? Okay guys, we are just going to make a simple frosting today to add some details to our little gingerbread guys. And I'm just going to use 2 cups of powdered sugar, just scoop and level. We're going to use about 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I'm just going to eyeball it. I like mine to taste good, so I'm pretty generous. And then we're going to start, you're going to need 2 to 3 tablespoons of milk. I'm going to start with 1.5 to 2. And we're just going to whisk that together. Okay, that whisk wasn't working very well for me. It's not a very stiff whisk, so I switched over to a spatula. And you just want to stir your frosting till it's nice and smooth. And see how it's not super runny, it's got some body to it. That's what we're looking for. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put mine in one of the Wilton plastic bags and I'm just going to snip a little bit off the end. You don't want to snip very much because we want to be able to make eyes and a mouth. things I wanted to mention. If you are concerned about the level of spice that's in the cookie, if you're doing them for little ones, you can always decrease the amount of ginger or cinnamon, but honestly, it's really not overpowering. It is very complimentary in this cookie recipe, so I don't think that it would be off-putting to many kids, but if you think it would be, go ahead and adjust spices to however you think would be good for your little ones. And then I just wanted to mention that I just decorated these really quickly to give you just an idea of what they would look like when they're done. The way I baked them, I baked the larger 4-inch cookies for 10 minutes. I baked the smaller guys, the 2-inch ones, for 8 minutes, and they are still pretty soft. I just wanted to show you. They're a nice soft cookie. If you want a crispier gingerbread cookie, if you want a crispier texture, you're going to want to bake them longer than I did. But I like a soft cookie. It's just my preference. So those are my baking times for a soft cookie. If you wanted the crunchy cookie, I would go up to 12 minutes for the larger ones and 10 minutes for the smaller guys. But you can experiment on your own and make a decision for yourself what kind of texture you prefer for your cookie. The other thing I wanted to mention, the frosting, the icing that we did here is just a super quick, basic icing to do. You can still decorate it. You can tell it makes them really cute. However, my next video is going to be on Christmas cutouts, sugar cookie cutouts. That's going to be my next video, and in that I'm going to share with you a crusting buttercream that my family is crazy over. I've been using it and making it since the kids were very little, and they love it, and it would also work well for these cookies too. So it has a little more flavor to it because it also includes some butter. It is a true buttercream, so it has some butter to it. So you might want to keep that in mind if you want a different kind of icing. Stay tuned for that. You might enjoy the crusting buttercream for these as well. So anyway, that wraps up our gingerbread cookie tutorial. I hope it was helpful to you. It's not hard to do at all. Just some people find rolling out dough to be a little bit intimidating, but don't be intimidated by rolling things out. Just don't roll them too thin. That's the biggest mistake people make, and don't be real aggressive. When your dough is super cold, you do have to use a little bit of muscle, but you don't want to use a lot, and you certainly don't want to be really aggressive when you're rolling. You just want a nice, gentle touch to your dough, and once it warms up, it'll roll out beautifully for you. So don't get discouraged by that. I think I did mention earlier, if you do find that there's some cracking in your dough when you first take it out, let it warm up a little bit and the cracks will roll right out. So there's a couple things that people tend to struggle with when rolling out cookie dough, and just a few things to keep in mind. So I hope this was helpful to you, and these will be great for Christmas. I hope you will add them to your holiday baking list. I know we're getting close to Christmas here. So anyway, thanks so much for joining me today, guys. Leave me a comment, like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.